A month ago, I'm not sure what would have sounded crazier to me, that our synagogue would flood for the first time, or that my house would flood for the first time, or that I'd actually be giving a Rosh Hashanah sermon on Joel Osteen's pulpit. What a time it has been for too many of us. And unfortunately, yes, rabbis do flood. I thought I had gone to rabbinical school for a reason. But in fact, as many of you know, 4 of our 6 Beth Yeshurun rabbis' homes were flooded. Natural disasters do not discriminate, especially this one. Too many good people across our community and in this city lost their lives and their homes. This time it seemed that nobody was completely safe. Like us all, I've had to deal with other personal challenges in my life. There was the night my daughter had a grand mal seizure and she was unconscious for 24 agonizing hours at Texas Children's Hospital. Like many of us, I've lost too many friends in our congregation, too many good people of all ages, including my best friends, Josh and Robin Berry, to a terrible car accident in 2011. But in the end, in order to get through those challenging times, I had to look for something, anything, that would help me grow as a person. I strongly believe that is what people like Robin and Josh would have wanted me to do. It's also part of being Jewish. Despite any personal or collective suffering that we experience, we commit ourselves as Jews to overcoming, and in the end, we try to be stronger for it. It's part of who we are. It's ingrained in our DNA from the very beginning of our history. We recall the powerful moment in the book of Genesis. Jacob has been wrestling with the godly angel all night. As the sun rises, Jacob has won. Jacob's on top. But then he does something very unusual. He tells the angel, Ki im berachtani, I will not let you go until you bless me. What is Jacob really telling the angel? I will not let you go until you bless me. I will not let go of my suffering until you, God, help me recognize the blessings that lie within my struggles. And God responds to his request by changing his name from Jacob to Israel, which in Hebrew means Yisrael, to wrestle with God, meaning to struggle with God Almighty and ourselves during life's most difficult moments until we as Jews find some type of blessing. And because all of us are the children of Israel, we are given the mandate to wrestle with our struggles until we find some type of benefit that helps us grow as people. Maybe that's why we as Jews have been through so much persecution and suffering over the centuries for too long, and yet we are still here. We've always been able to persevere through our difficult times and have grown stronger because of them. Maybe there are some blessings I can take from a devastating flood that has pushed and tested me in far-reaching ways as a father, as a husband, and as a rabbi. Now, please know, I don't want ever to discount what other people are still going through. Thousands who are still struggling to find a place to live and pay the bills. I don't want to offend any of you. And I know for too many of you, it was not your first time to flood. But tonight I want to tell you that for me and my family, I've already discovered one blessing. No, it's not because my wife will get to build a brand new kosher kitchen she's always wanted and deserved. And no, it's not the fact that I now have years of sermon material. So far, what is my number one blessing? To explain how I think I've already become a better person, I want to first ask everyone here tonight to answer the following question. But please use your inside voice to answer. Think to yourself for a moment, what are you worth? What are you worth? Did you think about your net worth financially? Or how you contribute to our community or society? Or did you think about how much you do around the house, despite what your spouse might say? If you thought about your net worth, it's understandable. Far too often, our popular culture has said to us what we own, the size of our homes, the make and model of our cars is what we are worth as a person. Think about it. When we ask, what is so-and-so worth? The answer always seems to be a monetary one. If you hear someone say, I'm worth $10 million, what happens to that person when his investments collapse and he or she loses everything? Are they then valued at nothing? Has our self-worth as people, as Jews, as American Jews, been too often based on our net worth? Since Hurricane Harvey, this question has been at the forefront of my mind. Years ago, I read of a pastor in Minnesota who launched a 100-thing challenge to his members. He encouraged his members to reduce their family's personal possessions to 100 items or less. The purpose, said that pastor, was to break the hold of materialism. And he even went from 5 suits to 2, from a dozen ties to 3. Many of his members took his words and actions to heart and agreed to do the same. They donated many of their items to charity, even some expensive ones like furniture and clothes, cars and boats. Well, Hurricane Harvey, in about 30 minutes and several feet of water, forced Lisa and me to go from 2 floors of material objects to 1. I'll never forget that Sunday morning as long as I live. You really cannot imagine, you can't imagine it until you actually see dirty bayou water enter your home in a matter of minutes. I'll never forget as the water first started to come in on the back patio in the living room. It was just a little trickle. And I started yelling at Lisa and the kids, get some towels. I was going to beat this flood. I was an idiot. It actually comes in everywhere, on all 4 sides, and even up from the floor in a matter of minutes. The home you've worked so hard to build, everything on the first floor destroyed. 3 feet of dirty bayou water in the same dining room you've celebrated countless holidays and Shabbat dinners. In the same living room you've shared your most private moments with your spouse and your children, where you've cried, laughed, and celebrated so much of life. It is truly indescribable until you really experience it. Let me just tell you how horrible our home looked. It was so bad, I was on the phone with my mother-in-law in Dallas that afternoon, begging her to come later that week to help us clean up. I became the first son-in-law in the history of the Jewish people. When the waters of Hurricane Harvey finally receded from our neighborhood on that Monday morning, 24 hours later, we decided to move to a friend's home. But we decided before we left to pack up our most prized possessions. We heard of potential looters in the area. Who knew, God forbid, if the floodwaters would come back? There we were, forced to consolidate our most important items into small suitcases, not knowing for sure whether everything else that we were leaving on the second floor could be lost. I never thought in a million years I would have to tell my wife and 3 children, pack up just a small bag with your most prized possessions. What did the kids pack up? Their cell phones, their cell phone chargers, their laptops, their PS4 video game. One of my sons got his fantasy football trophy. And at least one of them did ask about their tallis and tefillin. I had done something right as a rabbi. And that was it. That was all the material things that really mattered. Me? What could I pack in one small suitcase? Important financial documents, my tallis and tefillin, my Kiddush cups and challah cover we use every Friday night, my cell phone charger, my laptop computer, my Texan season tickets. Maybe I should have left those. And that was it. And you know what? I was fine with it. Nothing else at that moment really mattered because Lisa and the kids, thank God, were safe. How often do we say material things, they don't matter, or it's just stuff, or I'm not materialistic at all? I say those things all the time, but let me be honest, it is Rosh Hashanah. I'm not sure I ever really meant it. I do like nice things in my home. My car, I can be materialistic. Lisa and I are blessed to both work, to have created an upper middle class home. But last week, honestly, for the first time in my life, 3 weeks ago, for the first time in my life, I could say material things really don't matter and really mean it for the first time in my life. It hit me even more a few days after the flood. After days, what seemed like weeks of dealing with moving destroyed items out of our home, I was feeling really down. The piles of flooded out clothes, tables, and kitchen items in my neighborhood and in our front yard were never ending. The street itself actually smelled. At that point, I was leaving our home with my oldest son, Joshua, and a woman in her late 20s was picking through the garbage in my yard. I told her to please stop. It was all contaminated with floodwaters. She looked at me and said she didn't care. Rather, she was desperate to provide for her children. I couldn't believe it. I told her to please be careful, and one of the construction guys in my house then handed her a bottle of bleach. We begged her to clean anything that she needed to take. I thought I had it bad. How could I have ever thought that? As hard as things are going to be for Lisa and me and for many of us over the next year, we will never have to pick through someone else's garbage, through their contaminated, flood-damaged garbage. But think for a moment about how many people in this city are still doing so because they need something, anything to support their families. How could I ever complain again that I don't have enough material items? Years from now, if I continue to value material objects less and experiences and relationships more, then this awful event would have been worth it, whether your home was flooded or not. I hope these past 3 weeks have also made you think really hard. What is ultimately the most important thing to you and your family? Your relationships, your health, your children or grandchildren? Because Harvey has reminded me that in the end, it's really not about the size of our homes or how much stuff we have. One of our tradition's original contributions to the world was redefining what is sacred. Yes, there are a few places, just a few, that are sacred to our people. Jerusalem, the Western Wall. But tradition often teaches that time is a lot more holy. We are commanded to keep and honor the Sabbath, or days like Rosh Hashanah, because reserving these days to focus in on what really matters most in our lives is essential. And what really matters most? In the wake of Harvey, we were all reminded it's not about our material possessions. It's about shared experiences with those we love. It's about caring and giving to those in need. After the last few weeks, how can any of us, ever again consider our self-worth to be dependent on our net worth? Maybe there is a silver lining to what so many of us have been through. No matter if you flooded or not, can this most terrible of hurricanes change you for the better? Can all of our families become closer and spend more time with each other? Can we take more trips with our loved ones, even simple ones? Can the beach in Galveston look just as good as a beach in California? I know it takes a big event like Harvey to make that happen, but can we? And can we come together more as a community at services, and Shabbat, and holidays? Can we come together more? Can more of us be there, especially when, God willing, soon we're back in our beloved building? A close friend of mine who lives in Meyerland named Gil, whose home flooded badly during the Memorial Day floods of 2015, started telling me a year later in 2016 that it was the best thing that ever happened to him and his family. After all that they had lost and the great disruptions in their life, I used to think, how was it possible that he was telling me that it was the best thing that ever happened to him and his family? I thought he was nuts. What did he mean that he and his wife had a better perspective on life? What did he mean that they never felt closer with each other and their 3 children? What did he mean that they were now worrying less about how their home looked, and instead they were truly experiencing life more? Before Hurricane Harvey, I thought, how was that possible? Now, Now, I'm just beginning to understand. And while I don't ever expect to call Hurricane Harvey the best thing that ever happened to me, I do think that in the end, with God's help, we can all be better people for it. That's the long-term goal that I have set for myself this new year. According to our tradition, God never promised us that life would be fair. It says that nowhere in the Torah, nowhere in the Hebrew Bible. That's not the type of world that God created for us. I wish it was. But here's the promise God did make to all of us. God promised to us that when we have to confront the unfairness, like he did for Jacob, he would be at our side to help us find some type of blessing that will allow us to move on with our lives. What will be your blessing? This may be the ultimate question for all of us here in Houston, Texas, during this new year. Shana Tova.